Today we're going to go in a different direction, sort of upward, maybe. Andrew Scaglione, Radio.Cloud is our guest. And I'm very interested in a lot of what you have to say because a lot of us are afraid of the cloud. So let's turn it over to you, Andrew.
All right. Thanks, Barry. Nice to meet everyone. Again, my name is Andrew Scaglione. I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio, so I have not frozen yet. We're on the mend in terms of the weather. I'm sure you guys are all not. I'm sure there's multiple people that have been affected by the cold this week, so I'm not complaining. But I do appreciate you reaching out, Barry, and helping set this up.
Well, one
And I
quick
hope,
question. One quick question. How do you want questions? We have the chat box, we have the raise
yeah.
your hand, or you can ask them to wait till you're done. It's up to you.
So the chat box is open. I would say if you want to put something in the chat, go for it. And when I see it, I'll answer it as we go. Otherwise, let's wait until the end, and then I can still have everything available to share in terms of my deck and a little screen share of the platform itself, and I can bounce back and forth while we're doing questions that way.
Excellent.
So what I'll do is, like I said, I have a presentation, a PowerPoint. It's a little bit about AI and cloud technology and just what's already capable and being done in the industry using the technology, showing some case studies from our clients. And then I'll show you a little bit about what the Radio Cloud platform itself looks like and sort of how it's built on that technology of cloud and AI. Before we get into that, and this was a request from Reiner, so I want to show this now. And Barry just said a lot of people are scared of the cloud. So the one of the solutions we have to that is, even though everything that you or your stations do, mostly everything will be done in the cloud, which is just to say in the web browser, we have this little piece of hardware, which it may not be this exact type model, but we call this an edge gateway. You can kind of see it's a little fanless device that fits in the palm of my hand. Essentially, this is the local playout box. So you do everything in the cloud, but the actual playout is still done locally, either at the station or directly out at the transmitter site. It also stores your content and your logs forward up to 2 weeks into the future. So that prevents, again, against an internet outage taking you off the air. So that's just keep that in mind throughout the presentation. It is a completely cloud native system, and the technology behind it is essentially lets you operate from a web browser. But we still do like to have that sort of hybrid model with that one little piece of hardware, a main and a backup version of it sitting on site. So with that said, I will share my screen, do a full screen here, and we'll dive right in.
All right.
So I want to start with the cloud side of things, and specifically a definition of what it means to be cloud native, because there is a little bit of a difference between just being in the cloud and being cloud native specifically. So cloud native means you built your program platform application from the ground up in a cloud environment, which means it didn't exist in the past already as a on-prem or terrestrial product, and now it's being hosted in the cloud or in a virtual machine. That's more of a lift and shift model, and you can call that cloud or cloud-based. Cloud native means we took it from scratch, built it all in the cloud. That just lets you take advantage of all the features and functions of a cloud architecture. It lets you be more efficient and productive because things are just faster and they are all sort of tied together a little bit better. Term you probably hear sometimes, microservices and containers. So a microservice in radio speak would be something like a simple task, uploading or transcoding a piece of audio from WAV to MP3, generating a playlist, regenerating an hour to get new content onto the playlist, things like that. Those are all microservices and they run in containers. And what makes cloud native architecture so scalable and so functional is that these microservices are only turned on when they're needed. So we can basically activate that microservice for a handful of milliseconds and then turn it off. So it's not just running in the background to generate the playlist when we don't need to generate a playlist, just as an example. And all of that, because it's cloud native to begin with, it's going to save you that money, especially on a large capital expense up front, but also operating expenses over time. And I'll sort of outline how that happens throughout the presentation. So I want to do a little side by side also of pain points, traditional hurdles in dealing with automation playout systems, and then how a cloud system addresses those problems. So like I just alluded to, I've seen quotes for Wide Orbit and Zeta and Audio Vault and Enco and these hardware driven terrestrial based systems. It's expensive to buy and upgrade a cluster onto one of those types of platforms. You have to buy computers and upgrade hardware and software, and that's costly. With a cloud solution, and with Radio.Cloud specifically, we say you can save up to 90% on hardware, and it goes towards sustainability. And the hardware aspect, I mean, you saw this box not only can do audio processing as well, it can run multiple stations. So we have, I'm thinking of one station or one cluster in particular, they're running 4 different stations out of one box, and they have a backup box too. So they essentially have 2 boxes for 4 stations, and they, in a few slides, I'll give you a little photo evidence of their server room and what that looks like now after moving to a cloud environment. Traditionally, you have the hardware, great, but you still have to do those software updates to keep everything up to date and as fresh as possible. In any cloud software, we're all using the cloud at the very least for file storage or things like that, but there's automatic updates that are done just through the cloud, which is nice because you locally don't have to manually install anything. We just push those updates automatically for you, whether that's an update to that box or if it's an improvement or a new feature actually in the platform itself. The interconnection of clusters, different stations in different markets or locations, it's always been possible, just maybe a little cumbersome or a few hurdles to overcome, or maybe I have to use a VM to access that market if I'm voice tracking, something like that. Whereas with Radio.Cloud, with a cloud architecture, everything's connected through the cloud, and you don't even have to download anything. It really is just a browser-based system. So I open my computer if I'm voice tracking in Tucson, where Barry is, but I'm doing a station in Portland, Maine. I don't have to log into a VM or a VPN to get to the Portland, Maine station. It's completely browser-based right in my laptop, wherever I am. Localization is something we preach a lot of. And typically, there's always been ways to do localization. It's just been a lot more manual, and it hasn't been perfected in terms of how much you can do. In the cloud, you get up to 5 times more localization per hour, and it's really seamless and simple to sort of build this once, deploy that localization at scale across a network or a cluster of stations, and not have to continuously do that manually. It's an automated task. As these automation systems grow and get more and more feature heavy and feature rich, it does provision the hardware, and occasionally you do have to upgrade to more robust hardware. Whereas, like I've mentioned, even though we have that playout box on site, the heavy lifting is actually done in the cloud. The box and the cloud are in constant contact every 5 to 10 seconds. So anything new to the logs or the playlist does get automatically pulled down to that playout box. But really the heavy lifting and all the sort of tasks and functions that are driving this automation platform, that's all taken care of in the cloud. So it doesn't take a huge server or multiple computers on your site in your server room to do that. A few different case studies to sort of display this and better paint a picture, because I can talk about it all you want, but it's much better. And if I'm learning something, it's much better to see how my colleagues are using it. So we have a station in Houston, KYST AM. It's an all news talk 24-hour station, mostly satellite programming, and they do a 2-hour live morning show Monday through Friday as well. So last summer, they got on with Radio.Cloud early last year, about a year ago, and we at the beginning they put their two edge gateways, the playout boxes, out at the transmitter site. They had a satellite dish, an uplink, and their receivers all at the transmitter site as well. But they still had a small studio that they would go into to do the morning show, and just it's an office space. They would all work out of there. Last July, early July, Hurricane Beryl rolls through and just devastates Houston. Their station was inaccessible for a week. They didn't have power. They couldn't even get into their station for a full week. But their transmitter site kept power. They didn't lose power at the transmitter site, and because of that, because the important play out equipment was there, they were one of two news talk stations not to go off the air at all in Houston. And so they were able to continue to serve their listeners, do their morning show, and switch satellite programming as well, which that's another thing that's possible in a cloud native environment now is, you connect this thing to like a Wegener receiver or an XDS receiver. You can actually do switching in the cloud. This box will listen for those cues, the triggers, whatever you want to call them, and switch from this box to the Premiere box to play the Fox News update at the top of the hour, and then switch back for a local promo, and then flip over to the Wegener box for an hour-long show. On and on. That's just something else to keep in mind. That's what this client is using it for mainly, is it's play out, but it's also actually able to handle satellite feeds as well. So what I alluded to before, that 4-station cluster, it's KSJO FM. It's in the Bay Area. They had this building for many years. And as they were moving their stations to Radio.Cloud, they got notice from their landlord saying, it's August 1st, you have until August 30th, and you gotta find a new space. You have to get out of the building. So that's no fun, obviously, especially with all that equipment involved. But when they heard that, they had 3 of the 4 stations already transitioned to Radio.Cloud. We were working on the 4th at the time. And they figured, well, everything's running already. Let's just take the backup box, move it to the transmitter site, start to run the playoff off of those, move the main box also out to the transmitter site, and continue that way. So all 2 boxes, the main and the backup, were moved to the transmitter site. They moved a few other important pieces of equipment out there as well. And by the end of the month, they were able to completely move out of their building. They were sort of forced into it, but that actually let them evaluate, do we need this much space for a server room, for multiple racks, and for a studio? And they didn't. A lot of that equipment is now out at the transmitter. They now have a more Main Street central location, not necessarily a traditional radio studio, but something to give them more visibility in the community. And they save money on the hardware, they save money on the studio space, and it's all because of the cloud environment that they were utilizing. Some of you probably heard about or read about in New York around Labor Day last year, what was ESPN radio for a while on 98.7 had been handed back to MS, flip formats, became that pop-up station TJ 98.7, which about 2-3 weeks ago became Exitosa, a Spanglish station in New York. So that was, I know a lot about that because they called Radio.Cloud in August and they said, is this possible for you guys to help us essentially spin up a pop-up radio station on 98.7 in New York essentially, that goes on air on August 31st. And this was probably 10 to 14 days before that. So think about that. You're calling an automation company and you're saying, we have 2 weeks to put a station on the air. It's, maybe it's possible, but it's not really possible traditionally, to take 5 or 6 servers from one of the terrestrial traditional systems and try to get that shipped out to a location, hooked up. It's not feasible. But because all we have to do is send one of those boxes to their transmitter site, which coincidentally is the Empire State Building. So that's kind of cool. As a guy that grew up in Jersey, I like to brag about that we have some of our boxes on the Empire State Building. But we sent that out to them. They hooked it up, and their programming staff, who their morning show is in Delaware, their program directors in Cleveland, they did everything else remotely. So essentially from when they started learning and using the system, it took 5 days to get the station on the air. That's type of stuff, stunting or flipping formats or getting a station basically from 0 to on air, not really possible unless you're using a very light hardware footprint with remote capabilities. This one is I think my favorite in terms of it best paints the picture of how amazing the tools that the cloud provides us can be. This is a product that we have called News Cloud. It's mostly used in Europe right now. And so we can kind of ignore the features of it, but essentially it's a automated news production, localization, and distribution system, all browser based. And so there's about 100 and let me make sure I say this right. There's 150 stations and there's 130 versions of the news. So essentially, almost every station takes a unique custom version of the news. And whether that's just rearranging the order of the stories, which everything here on the screen, these are all, it's an example of you have the news organization putting like 5 national stories, 3 regional stories, 2 state stories, weather, sports, some custom tags at the beginning and the end. A lot of things you'd record only once and then update every couple hours or not update at all. So what was happening before was they would produce all these work parts. The stations have already dictated, I want national, local, and a weather forecast. They've already given their outlines of what they want. And so in the past, it was all cloud-based already, but it was more everything in by the top of the, by 50 past, so 10 minutes until the top of the hour. And then we hit render and distribute more or less. It merges all those work parts together into 130 different versions and sends them out. That took 7 to 8 minutes. Pretty good, pretty fast for that much customization. Now we've moved it to a different service in the cloud, which I highlight on the next slide. And it takes 7 to 8 seconds to do all of that. So this lets the news organization focus on super serving their listeners because they can work up until 2 to 3 minutes until the top of the hour, hit the button to render and distribute all 150 stations worth of news and send that out. And it only takes a matter of seconds. So that's the true power of the cloud. It just is a tool that enables us to do more for our stations, for our clients. And for us as Radio Cloud, the common factor is Amazon Web Services. Of course, you have Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, other cloud providers as well. I'm just speaking from experience of AWS today. And what really drives a lot of the innovation that I talked about already is Lambda. AWS Lambda essentially is just serverless computing. And what that means is you don't have to have that type of compute power in your server room at your technical operations center to do all of that, because AWS already does have that in their data centers. So when I go to upload a new playlist or transcode a file, generate a clock, any of those little tasks that don't take a whole lot of power, but they do take some, we essentially rent an AWS server at one of their data centers for 1 second, a handful of milliseconds, 5 seconds, however long it takes. When that process is done, we hand that server back and we only pay for what we need and what we use. So it's not something that has to be a computer in my server room running 24/7, but maybe it's used a lot on Friday afternoon when everyone's getting their tracks in for the weekend, or Monday when we're pulling things that happened on the weekend. It's only used when you need it, which means it's really scalable, it's very cost effective, and it's super fast. And the reason it's super fast is because of these really this global architecture that AWS has. And I think this paints a nice picture of it when you have a region, an example of a region being US East, which is in Columbus, Ohio, US West, which is out in Oregon. Inside that region, there's multiple availability zones. And inside each zone, there's multiple data centers. So think 3 to 5 data centers in 3 to 6 zones in each region. And we have a copy of your audio essentially, because that's our currency in radio. When you upload that to Radio Cloud, you're uploading it essentially to AWS, and it is replicated and stored in multiple data centers across multiple zones in a main and a backup region. So it's super secure, maximum redundancy. And we even take the extra step of encrypting your data from the cloud provider. So AWS sees, okay, there are files stored here, but they don't know what those files are. So that's the primer on the cloud side of things. I will flip over to AI now and sort of give you how we've used AI so far, and then also how I see AI being used. Voice tracking is obviously a big part of any automation system, and we did build in an adaptive AI voice tracker. Gen AI voices are such a tiny little part of what AI can do and already does in general that it's in our platform, it's able to be used, but it's such a small part. I mean, AI, in my eyes, is a great tool for us to see how do we become more efficient as an industry? What can we do differently to make our day-to-day work even easier? And so I see the best use for AI as an assistant, like a research assistant. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. But this is a look at what the AI voice tracking platform looks like. And so the really cool thing about this is all you have to do to fill an unhosted day part, which is the main use for this. If I don't have an overnight host or a late night weekend host, do I want to keep playing Music Sweeper, Music Sweeper, Music Sweeper, or do I want to run a few AI voice tracks an hour just to give a news report or a weather report, or even promote the morning show, promote a station event that's coming up? These are things that don't take any manual work from you after a one-time setup. So your programmer can come in and say, here's the voice I want to use, whether it's an AI voice or a cloned voice of one of your hosts, and here's the content I want that voice to talk about. And then when the playlist is generated each day, it's essentially we create the script, we create the audio file for you. So that's Voice Track AI. That is a very small way to use AI to your benefit, but it's something that's built into the system. And I think as of now, it's the only really AI voice tracking platform already built into an automation system. One thing we can do with that tool, and that's already being done, we have a cluster of, it's not really a cluster, it's an ownership group of 15 stations across Germany in different markets. And they said, well, can we run a countdown show, a chart show on the weekends, just 1 hour on a Saturday afternoon? And can we do that with AI? So we use this tool, this Voice Track AI tool, help them build this out to where they can have 15 completely unique chart shows. And we scan the Spotify charts, Apple Music charts, Shazam charts, city by city. And also there's a little input from their program director locally. But Nuremberg versus Munich versus Berlin versus Hamburg, all of these can have similar but completely different and localized chart shows running at the same time, hosted by the same AI voice
in
different markets.
That time.
And it's just something that's not possible without AI technology, because it's not scalable necessarily. So it's opening up these new opportunities. I'll quickly glaze over this one, but it's the biggest media group in Finland is using this technology to run an afternoon show on their national FM station. So a drive time show now hosted by AI. It's their program director's voice. The guy was just too busy to do a live show every day. So he said, well, can we clone my voice and have that as the afternoon host? And that will also let me focus on programming all my other stations more efficiently, because now I don't have to sit live in the studio for 4 hours every day or take the time to record voice tracks. Something that's been a part of Radio.Cloud since very early on when we created the software is just AI-driven automatic mixing and segues. So over here, you see the ability on the right side there. That's just sort of the graphical representation of what the playlist looks like in terms of mixing and segueing the elements. Local content going into network content, both set over the intro of a song, imaging fading into music, vice versa, things like that. All of that is mix point driven, which is what you see on the left there. And it's also AI driven. So that is a very easy use of AI that you don't even as a host necessarily have to go in and adjust. It's just sort of running there in the background. But the way I see it, this is something we're developing called Assistant AI. it's a research tool. It's the best way to use it is, why do I have to sit here and Google things for 20 or 30 minutes when I can ask ChatGPT or another large language model just one or two sort of pointed questions and get all the information I need in one place. And that's the goal with this, is whether you're doing a live show, a voice tracked shift, or if you're not even doing either of those, if you're just creating content for the web, you can come in here, get this dashboard with the trending news for your market, hot music for your market, and you get to pick your talk break. So let's just say there's a 8:30 a.m. slot where we're either going live or recording a voice track. I can choose that slot, and I can choose if I want weather, news, sports, something about the station, artist, title, on and on, you name it, it's there. Within a few seconds after clicking that generate button, you're going to get a full script of, here's what you could do to talk about that topic at this talk break, which is playlist specific, station by station. And you can use that script if you want verbatim. You could take parts of it. You don't have to use it at all. It's just there as a sort of idea generator for you to get started. But instead of having to Google all that information about Taylor Swift or Coldplay or any other artist that's coming up in your playlist, it just provided it for you right there. And then that goes even further. You could use that on social media, online, on the web, station blog, anything like that. So prep and research done for you with less work on your side. And then my little fun bonus AI idea, which is not something I've done myself yet, but there's aspects of it that we've played with. So you hear ChatGPT and these other language models. Every time you plug something into that, it's essentially, it just gets smarter and smarter. It takes all the questions everyone's asked it, and it knows how to answer more of those. It also gets to know you personally and starts to respond a little better in how you like your responses typed. But you can also train your own GPT, which is kind of neat. So you can do this and essentially feed in different prompts, guidelines, documentation, and then just take advantage of it, because it's not going to go give that information publicly. It's going to continue to get smarter and smarter for something that you need it to. So I first heard of this idea. I was at a conference last year. One of the speakers was saying, I trained my own GPT with 20 years of my medical records and essentially made this my sort of go-to WebMD, my personal WebMD of, here's my medical history. And then when he feels sick, when he has a question about what do I need to do to improve my health or to work on this part of my health, he can just go there because it has that hard documentation from 20 years of all of his scans, his blood work, anything like that. And so you can make that almost like a personal assistant. So my thought is, for both for programming and for engineering, why can't we do the same thing for our specific station or for our cluster? If we plug in like listener data, sales data, old marketing or social media campaigns, and the metrics behind those, ChatGPT and other language models, the real benefit to AI is how fast it can analyze data, take a look at something, summarize that data for you. So if you give it a lot of data, it can very quickly spit out, well, it looks like you're strongest in terms of listenership in the afternoons in your AQH numbers, but on the stream, it's better late at night. And then here are the sales campaigns that have worked for you. Here's where you've generated more money. Things that will give you actual hard data to improve your radio station and drive more revenue in the future. And then on the engineering side, I'm thinking we all have, there's all documentation. Maybe we have it printed out. Maybe it's saved on a computer. Maybe it's both. Why can't we plug that in and have like our own back office know-how, knowledge base of, here's all the technical information that helps our radio station run. So then as we're training new engineers, or because I know that it's been a struggle to get young people interested in engineering, if we're just, the ops manager or the assistant program director shows some sort of technical interest, Well, now we have this whole reference material that's a knowledge base trained with our specific setup that we can add to and continue to build as a living, growing document. And that's something we've done a little bit with Radio.Cloud. We have a manual that we've plugged into a GPT and started to train it with that. So when we deploy this into our platform as almost like a chatbot, you can ask it, I want to build a broadcast clock and I want to specifically put a timed event in or back time this event to a certain time. How do I do that? And then it has that ability to essentially comb through the manual, which it's already learned, and give you that answer in a matter of seconds. So that's the true power of AI, is harnessing a lot of data, summarizing that data, and then just deciding, how can I use this data to make me or make my company more efficient, make us more money. So I'm going to flip my screen share over to the platform now and show you guys a little bit about just what this looks like, and then go back for a few more slides before we take questions. So what you're seeing now is the browser-based, everything's in the browser. This is our live studio. This lets you broadcast live in a web browser. All you need is a mic, a laptop, and an internet connection. And that's the sort of lowest common denominator. You can, of course, use this with a touch screen. It works great. Any MIDI device, little console with motorized faders, will plug into your computer and control this, and vice versa. And of course, you can also use it in your traditional studio setup as well. We're fully integrated with Axia and Wheatstone and Lavo, a few more of the bigger ones as well. But it works great with any of those platforms. The benefit of this being it's great for remote collaboration. So you'll see I'm popping my camera on right here. I can easily invite guests and co-hosts. I can take and make calls directly in the web browser with a SIP or an IP phone hybrid. And most notably, I think it just lets you as a station rethink, do I need to actually buy out a $20,000 or $30,000 new studio board or upgrade my equipment that way? Or can I think differently about it, save money on hardware, put a nice touchscreen in a studio with a few mics around it, and go from there? So it's something that, however you use it, it gives you the ability to broadcast live, but it also gives you the ability in the future to think differently about saving money and saving studio space. The playlist here is it's generated one of two ways. You can use a music scheduler and a traffic scheduler like Music Master, G Selector, Marketron, Radio Traffic, those type of companies. Upload your logs, we merge them together, create the playlist. Or we do have an internal music scheduling system as well. But you have your playlist here. You have the ability to jump around to different hours, work as far ahead as you want. Voice tracker, very easy to use. Right in the web browser, again, plug in your microphone and you can start talking, record your track. And when you're done, you just hit the stop button. It's going to trim any silence off the beginning and end for you automatically. We'll automatically set that voice track on the intro of the next song. So you're hitting the post right up the ramp every time. Hit save, it jumps to the next element. You can really be efficient working through that shift, hourly playlist, whatever content you need to create for the day. Speaking of your content, your audio, all of that gets uploaded to Radio.Cloud, stored in the audio browser. Artist, title, ID, everything you need. It's a content management system as well. But the unique part about it is this metadata editor. This is where you can set up to 5 alternate mix points. So think in the end of Hey Jude or like Stairway to Heaven, either a really long song or Hey Jude when it's just the na-na-nas. There's a song that you have a natural fade out point that's not the end of the song. You can set up to 5 of those in Radio.Cloud down to the thousandth of a second. And then again, that's sort of towards the AI side of it. We will use the best possible mix point for that particular hour. If the hour is running short, let's play the full song. If it's running a little long and we can take an earlier mix point on one or multiple elements, maybe we can get that extra song in at the end of the hour. So it's a smart system like that that continues to get better and better as you continue to work in it more and more. And a lot of that is because of AI, and a lot of that is because of it being in the cloud and being so flexible and agile. And when you go to build your broadcast clocks, which is really, it's almost as the oversimplification is you upload your audio, you build your clocks, put a few more rules in the background, and then it generates the playlist, and sort of you're off to the races. But building the clocks is it's drag and drop. So again, it's very user friendly, user intuitive. You're scheduling music inside Radio.Cloud. This is where you would pick the categories that you created in the audio browser. Commercial breaks, local content being voice tracks. So you build out your clocks, you schedule them in a grid, and you're off to the races. And the nice thing is you would have a drop down of all of your stations. So you can have your station logo or your company logo there, a drop down here. If you, as an engineer or a programmer or a host, are only working on a handful of stations, that's all you see. If you are a admin and you need to see all of them, you see all the stations. And again, completely browser based. So that's a very quick look at inside the Radio.Cloud platform. I'll leave that up in case we want to revisit that at all. And then I'll wrap up the last few slides here. So with sustainability, which I mentioned earlier, I think that's an important topic for us to talk about as an industry, and it is getting talked about more and more. But the reason I bring it up is because, as you can see, I mean, it's not a lot of hardware that it takes for us to run a station anymore, because a lot of it is scalable, renting those servers like I was talking about from Amazon Web Services. But it does let you reduce your hardware footprint when you move infrastructure to the cloud, whether it's your full playout system, whether it's your file storage system. It lets you think about that, save hardware, and then the not top of the mind, but something that is a benefit of that you may not think about right away is like that picture of the empty server room. If we save hardware in the server room, there's not computers running 24/7, whether they're actually working or not. They're going to generate less energy, less heat. We don't have to cool the server room as much. Electric bills go down, on-site maintenance goes down, and you as engineers then don't have to sit there and manually have to update or fix every single computer. It's, we outsource a little bit of it to AWS, and that's great on the security side, and that's great on the sustainability side. And then it lets you focus on the other little tasks that you already have on the site, at the transmitter site, and things like that. One more graphic to outline really what sustainability is. So we as a customer, as a cloud user or cloud company, we're responsible for sustainability in the cloud, meaning how we designed Radio.Cloud, how we deployed that, any updates and the code itself, and a lot of things like that go into the platform we can do sustainably. But then if it's not in a sustainable platform in terms of the architecture and the infrastructure, it doesn't matter. So that's where AWS comes in, and they're responsible for sustainability of the cloud. So those availability regions and zones and data centers that I mentioned, all their servers, how they cool them, electricity, efficiency, all of that is their responsibility. So when you combine those two together, that's really when you complete the puzzle, because one without the other doesn't really go towards sustainability as much as we want to. So to summarize, and then we'll dive into questions and have a fun conversation after this. Essentially, when you move to a cloud-based operating system, you're getting that global reliability, security, flexibility, and scalability thanks to AWS and thanks to that whatever cloud provider you use. It just gives you that elevated level of, most importantly, security and availability. It also gives you an ever-evolving software. So like the example I always use is I drive a Camry. I love my Camry. I never want to get rid of it. But it's a 2015, it's 10 years old at this point. So it's getting up there in mileage. But what if that Camry just got better and better every year that I drove it? And that's sort of what cloud native softwares do, because you use it. It's great when you first get your hands on it, but all of the new features that are going to get deployed and all of the improvements and enhancements You get those at no extra cost. So you always have the newest version of the software, even if you're 1 day into using it or 1 year or 10 years. It's that's the beauty of a cloud system because we can push those updates to you and give you the best version of the software, and you're not on version 2 when the playout system is on version 6. It also lets you think about how can I downsize my studio, my server room, my station in general, because I could do that before, but maybe this makes it easier and more plausible with the cloud. So that's sort of the takeaways there to keep in mind are the ever evolving software, the ability to think critically about the future of how our stations look, and then just the enhanced layer of security and availability that you wouldn't otherwise have running it all locally. So I'll leave this up. That just links to our website, which is Radio.Cloud, just like the company name. That's my number and my email as well. If anyone wants to jot that down, I'll leave that up for a couple of minutes. And if you guys want to start throwing questions at me, go for it. And then I'm happy to jump back to any other slide or any part of the platform as well. But I really appreciate the time today.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I found it very interesting, and you answered almost all the questions that I had going in. Um, I'll post this question because AI is the big thing in everybody's mind right now. It certainly was big at CES. Some people are afraid to have AI clone their voices. What do you say to somebody that is worried about what could happen if their voice got cloned?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting and ever evolving topic right now. Um, I always say, like, if you're a talent with in this industry, if it's not already in your contract, the next contract you have has to have some sort of AI section or AI clause about your voice and how you own it, and you have to give permission before it gets cloned. Now, there are bad actors out there, and there's enough, Radio.Cloud YouTube, there's enough of my voice on the Radio.Cloud YouTube where someone could go YouTube to MP3 that, take all my voice, download it, and probably clone it. And there's really nothing I can do about that right now. Do I think that will happen? Probably not, because no one cares about my voice on the Radio.Cloud YouTube channel. But it's that is something that people are rightfully scared about and concerned about. But I think people who are actually on air and thinking, do I want my voice used on air as an AI replica of my voice? That's where you can actually have a lot more control of yourself, and where you have to take control and say, if you're going to do that, it's got to be in the contract. I have to own the voice in case I ever leave this company, and then also have to get fairly compensated for it. So one of my colleagues is the AI voice for a handful of our 24/7 AI stations in Europe, and part of his contract was, if his voice is used on any station, he gets X amount of dollars from the company and from the ownership of the station. So it really is an ever changing topic, but I think there's going to be more rules and regulations in place as we go through this year, especially.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite true because there's going to be some guy in the middle of Podunk Junction, Oklahoma, that takes a top 10 market voice and starts running it until he's found out.
Yeah, and that's the key, is like, how do we monitor that and how do we find that out? But then if they do get found out, I mean, there's going to be lots of legal action and court cases, I think, that will come down from this.
We'll probably start to have some apps that just like YouTube and such, they can listen and hear of a song and know what it is immediately within a few notes. And they'll be able to do that with voice eventually, something like that. Um, I'll ask one more question, then let others come in if they have questions. And that is, how long would it take? Is it something you could do in the next 2 minutes or 5 minutes to take your voice, clone it, and show us how it could become an AI voice?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure how fast it would take. So we use different companies, like 11 Labs is someone we've probably all heard of. They do a really good job. Play HT. There's a few others. If I were to do a very simple cloning and plug in, the more audio you plug in, the better, but you don't need a ton, is I guess the best way to say it. So but I'm personally, I'm not 100% sure if I were to plug in like 2 minutes of my clean audio, how long it would take to spit that out. I think it's fairly fast. I don't know how good it would be. I don't think it would be bad though.
Is it
But
part?
I don't have the tools to do that demo right now, but I'm happy to gather those and take that offline with anyone who wants to see that eventually.
So what you're saying is it's an add-on to the basic Radio.Cloud.
Yeah. Voice Track AI is a little bit of an add-on, but we essentially we can help facilitate that cloning if that's something that a station wants to do. Obviously, they keep the voice and they own the voice, but we can help set that up and say, send us 30 minutes of your clean audio of you on the air, no beds or rejoins or anything like that playing underneath it. And we'll do that cloning. And the more you add to it, of course, the better it gets with intonation and up and down. But it really is pretty good now. It's amazing what you can get when you feed even just 15 or 20 minutes of your voice into a voice cloning service. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Interesting. Rich, I
But
think
all you have to do is type in the text.
You can, so there's a few different ways you can do it. For a good voice cloning, generally you would upload a few files of your voice. You could type in the text, but I think that's more text to speech. And I think you'd have to have the voice first to do that. So in that case, you could pick one of the AI generated voices, or if you've already cloned your voice, pick that voice, type it in, and get something spit out. In our platform, it's more all the voices are built in and all the prompts are built in the background. So in that one, you just say, here's the voice I want to use, here's the content I want to talk about. And you don't even have to type anything. It is an editable script if you want, but you don't have to edit it.
Well, I mean, how do you get, I'm assuming on YouTube as an example, some of the AI voices are absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Mispronunciations and all kinds of things. Now, if I upload, let's say 20 minutes of my voice, all I have to do in the future then is to input the text, right?
So in other platforms, yes. With our platform, once we have your voice cloned, you don't even have to input the text. All you have to do is choose the topic that you want your cloned voice to talk about. And in the background of the platform, like if you were to pick next 3 songs or front cell or back cell or news report, there are prompts written to recognize when you click that, it will say, talk about this artist, but only use this database to pull information from. And you constantly, we train it to get better and better with pronunciation. So it's a little tweaking at the beginning. And then usually it runs very smooth after a few days of monitoring and making changes like that.
That it's actually smarter than I am.
Smarter than I am, for sure. I know that much.
Well, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I was playing around with ChatGPT a few months ago, and I said, give me the history of KFI, a radio station where I worked for almost 25 years. And it came back with some interesting information. But one thing I noticed was it talked about KFI having something in the city of Inglewood, California, which I said, that is not true. So I guess some of those databases have to be edited from time to time to correct that sort of thing.
Yeah, there are times when AI hallucinates, is sort of what the word is, and makes up things. And one example that's happened to me was my wife and I were planning a trip to Myrtle Beach. We love Food Network. We watch Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives religiously. And whenever we go on a trip, we look up where has Guy Fieri gone on Triple D, because frankly, he's never steered us wrong. So that's like our first thing is, where do we want to go? I asked ChatGPT, so I didn't have to go do all the Google work for it. give me a list of restaurants that Food Network has been to in Myrtle Beach, and then also that Guy Fieri himself has. It gave me the list, and when I looked up these places, there was no mention of Triple D on the websites. So I went to the Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives Wikipedia page. Never been to a Myrtle Beach restaurant. So you just, and that's, such a small innocuous thing. It's not affecting anyone. But yeah, there are some times when it does hallucinate. It does really think this is true, and I'm pulling this information from somewhere, but it's not true. So I always say, and I was a journalism major in college, so multiple sources is like ingrained in my blood. So ChatGPT is a great place to start that research, and then I always say fact check it or double check it elsewhere, especially if you're going to go on air or go public with something like that. It's a great place to start gathering and generating ideas from, but still a good idea to double check it, just like what you said with KFI, Marvin.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
I have a loaded question.
Yeah.
I looked at these things a lot and looked at the progress through radio. And the question popped in my mind is, what tools does this thing have to make radio less boring than it is? Because that's one of the things that keeps happening. You get less and less stuff. The bean counters cut budgets and people get cut away. And part of what we're suffering from right now is radio. By and large, there are exceptions, but by and large, it's boring. And that's, if we're ever going to dig ourselves out of this hole, I think we got to get interesting. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's 100% of what we have to do is be better content creators and be more engaging and relatable to the audience. And not ever having been like a morning host myself, I'm not sure that I have any great action items or ideas on that, but I think AI and cloud platforms like this that can take your programming staff and make them a little more efficient and save them time on those manual day-to-day things, or just, I'm programming 10 stations across 5 markets because that's just been dumped on my plate because, like you said, Chris, budget cuts and downsizing and all that. Maybe I can make my job easier by using more AI and cloud tools to make me more efficient and have less manual work. So then I actually can focus on creating better content, connecting with the audience and the listeners better. So I don't know if I have a great answer, but I think tools like this can help you focus on what got us all into radio, which is it's fun. It's so cool still to sit in the studio and crack the mic open and just be talking to, who knows, one person or 1,000 people at any given time. But yeah, that's the question, is how do we be more creative? And I know there was one radio show out in San Diego I was talking with that they use ChatGPT for a few different things. One of them is a segment they call Trash the AI, and they ask it really stupid, trashy questions. And so you can use it to your benefit, not only to make you more efficient in other things, but you can have fun with it too. It's like a little chat bot that you can sort of incorporate into your show and make fun of. So there's so many different ways to use it to your advantage, whether you're actually using it for content to your advantage, or if you're using it to take care of all your menial day-to-day tasks to let you focus more time on creating that content.
So it can be trashier than humans?
I think the limit to what it can do is what we ask it. So it absolutely could be trashier than humans the more and more we ask it.
Well, the last 15 years of my career were in talk radio in New York, and lots and lots and lots of legal issues. Now, supposing ChatGPT or AI hallucinates and says something that's not right, and whoever, particularly in today's talk radio, it's not nice. So if you say something really, really, really not nice about someone, you're going to have a problem. What do you do with that?
Yeah, the legal side of it is a whole different ballgame. And it just depends. If it's something that ChatGPT gave you as information and then you ran with it over the air, the liability is probably on you as a host if it's incorrect or factually wrong. If it's something where it's an AI voice that has said that, then it does the liability lie with the station itself? Does it lie with the technology behind the voice? I'm not sure if those questions have been answered yet, but that's the next year probably.
I think you're going to find that the liability lies with the radio station because it's responsible for everything that it broadcasts, regardless, where it comes from.
It's all about fact checking the AI as well, just until we know that it's absolutely spot on every time.
Fact checking? Who does that?
Right. I mean, it's 2025. We don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always contended that, and I think I said this before in this group, but remember, AI always comes with a certain amount of AS, artificial stupidity.
It's like any other tool. AI is great, but it's also improved by the user, or it's detracted by the user. Like if you're someone who doesn't use the tool correctly, it's not going to be great and it's not going to spit out great results for you. But if you know how to get the most out of it, then it can absolutely be a super, super great tool in your tool belt.
Well, as a programmer, I'm 100% with Chris on the boringness of today's radio. It's awful.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure where the creativity is going to come from because we haven't found it yet.
Yeah. One thing that one of our clients is doing, he's a nationally syndicated host. People have different views on syndication, but the nice thing about in the cloud is he's able to give a hyper localized show every night to every market, and he's on 70 or 80 markets. So he's manually, without the cloud and that kind of technology, you're not able to create 70 or 80 shows every night. It's too much work. It's just not possible. And so what he's able to do automatically essentially is he puts his content in, hits a button, and 70 markets get a custom local version. So even though sometimes syndication is seen as a dirty word and, I don't want to outsource, I want my local talent, you can now get the best national talent sounding local to your market. Maybe that's one step towards getting radio back to that fun, creative medium that it always has been and getting away from the boring. That's just something in line with the presentation with using AI and cloud as tools to work towards that.
Yeah, boundaries are going to be set up for AI.
Yeah.
Eric?
Well, I was with ABC Talk Radio and ran the WOR radio network. So syndication isn't a dirty word to me. So I just don't see how someone can do a custom show in 70 different
Well, I'm happy to show you that, Rich. I'm happy to take you offline and show you exactly how he's doing that, because it is pretty cool actually, and it's a relatively new piece of the technology, but the ability to do it is there. Eric,
Okay.
you have your hand up?
Oh, I was just wondering. I don't know if anybody, AI is a challenge mostly because of what's being used to train it, and they're using the internet mostly. But I'm wondering if any of the AI companies are kind of pre-vetting the parts of the internet that they use to train to try and lessen the complete stupid stuff that winds up getting into their AI product. Because it's, if you reduce the garbage in, maybe you'll get less garbage out.
It's a great point. I can't speak for any like OpenAI or any of those companies themselves, but I know that for at least our AI voice tracker, when you click next artist or next song, it's pulling up a bunch of prompts that we've written telling it use only this source or this data when you're grabbing the information to actually use when writing the script. So it's something that it goes both ways, I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's something that those companies can do, although there is so much garbage on the internet that who knows. But then it's also on the companies harnessing that technology to tell it only use these trustworthy news sources like this music database or that artist profile, and don't invent anything and don't take anything outside of what you see here. So it goes both ways, but yeah, it's definitely, there's so much stuff on the internet that you read that, you just know like this is not true. What is ChatGPT pulling from this? And then is it going to say that it is true because it's already out there on the internet?
And don't use George Carlin's 7 words.
And don't use George Carlin's 7 words, exactly.
No, everything on the internet is true.
Oh,
always
come
has
on
been.
now.
I mean, I would think if you were doing tracking a 70s channel, if it was music, you could use, the archive of Billboard for the charts and things like that were trustworthy.
Yeah.
But the closer you get to modern times, probably the quality of the memory is, starts to fade. And, like I can't remember what artist it was or anything, but I regularly will bump into the American Top 40 from the 70s on Sirius XM. So, well, who's your source? Well, it's Sirius XM, but it's really Casey Kasem, alive at the time that the show was recorded. So probably the news story about one of the artists was probably true.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that you get that covers the same topic from a year or two ago, maybe that original thing that's been greatly embellished over the time. On the other hand, there, we also know that some of the stuff that was put into those shows was, BS to spice them up.
Questions for Andrew. We're coming up on the hour here, or just past the hour.
Andrew?
Yes, sir.
At our SBE meeting, there were a little bit of vocalization, mostly from local stations that did satellite down, and that was their source to integrate back into your product. And I don't remember who brought it up, but it was like, can the cloud gain access directly to their satellite up in a satellite, so to speak, as opposed to having to ricochet it off of their either local transmission site or back to the studio? Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, vaguely I do. I don't know if we can. I think that would probably be on the satellite companies or the companies that are doing satellite programming and originating it themselves to figure out, can we deliver this directly to, without going from a satellite down to a satellite dish or an uplink at a local location. I don't know if we can do that right now. I don't know if they're looking into doing that or not. It's probably more on their side, but all we can do, I mean, we can get programming from pretty much any source, whether it's coming from IP, an FTP site, put right into Radio.Cloud, or if it's we just hook up the box to a satellite receiver where the programming is coming into live or delayed, and we can get that into the system as well. Or not even get it into the system, but switch to that source at the designated time to make sure it's played out.
Yeah. I enjoyed your presentation this afternoon. You'd flushed out a couple more things. I think you had a little bit more time this morning, and there were more ins and outs and stuff that I saw about programming, which was very interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, it's almost good that Mary isn't here, because she's not going to be selling all that much hardware.
Andrew, he's talking about Mary from Broadcast Depot.
Got it.
Any other questions for Andrew? Very interesting discussion we've had, and I'm sure that Andrew is more than happy to do a live demo for you or answer any other questions that may come up.
Absolutely. Yeah. You guys got my email. If not, Barry can share it with you, and reach out anytime, whether you have a question, if you want to see a full demo, if you know someone that you think this would be great on their station, more than happy to talk and talk at any time. And we'll be at NAB too. If anyone's going to NAB, would love to have you guys stop by our booth.
Well, for sure, I will stop by.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your time, appreciate the information, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you guys.